In this part of the Sculpto video introduction, we are going to talk about filament. Filament is the thing you put into your 3D printer to turn it into something else. Sculpto prints in PLA, and for every type of filament there is usually a heat listed on it. This has one right there. This has it listed there, and it's, you know, for most of at least the Sculpto filament, it's the same setting. However, you can choose the type of filament you use when you start a print. This over here is the old filament type. This is rebranded ESUN filament, and this was used in Sculpto printers up to the Sculpto Plus. There are also, if you see printed posts about things made, I had a lot of this glass clear filament. It was discontinued because it was impossible to get the raft off, and in the old days we had to use a raft when printing. So you either had to design for it or make like dual colored, or several colored prints. Much of this is glass clear. For this I used up some of my remains. As you can see through it a little bit. But that is the old type of filament. You will get asked for your type of filament if you use the Sculpto Plus or older. If you use the Sculpto Pro 2, it will assume that you are using the new filament. I have no idea who makes this, but it says Sculpto on top, and well, that means it's supposed to work. So there is that. They've apparently found out that not everything prints the same. This is a normal blue. This is a glitter. These two are in the same category when you choose your type of filament. I also have a white here, which I've not opened yet. Filament usually have one of these silica things inside. There's usually a question of, can I use other types of filament? I mean, you can try. You risk voiding your warranty, but you can try. There are a few things that you might want to consider, and this has to do with heat and perhaps humidity. This is a new thing that we've found out. Now, personally, I've not had the most amount of success with these, but I've not kept track of my temperature, you know, in the room. But these attempts at prints were made on my Pro 2. Both are new type filaments, and I figured that was weird. One of the reasons why it has stopped printing is that the gear was overheating, the filament gear. So I tried printing the same thing on my Sculpto Plus, and this also stopped, which again I thought was a little annoying. I tried make the exact same print but with one of the old types of filament, and that apparently went just fine. Again, I've not actually kept track of the temperatures, if my room temperature was higher, if my humidity was different, because there have been some talk in the Facebook group recently that the humidity can affect your prints. And in Denmark, we're currently having a heat wave, and people are reporting just, you know, filament just being too soft to use. I showed this piece of filament when I talked about the filament gear as well. This is basically what can happen if it's too warm. You can see the filament gear has pressed into it there, and the roll on the other side has indented it there. And if your filament becomes like this while you're printing, then it makes sense that it's difficult for the machine to grip it and then pull it through. And you risk having your prints just stop in the middle. It's important to keep track of the end of your filament. I have these things on my old filament. I do not recommend keeping them on when printing, especially not on the new types of filament. At least the ones I printed with the new filament, they don't seem to slide as well as the old ones. Of course, I adapted those ones for the old nozzle, the 0.6 millimeter nozzle. The reason why it's important to keep track of the end is that if your end comes under another part, see if I put it under here, and pretend I am pulling out something for a print, you might be able to just, that's difficult. It's difficult to demonstrate as well. Okay, but basically they can lock under each other so that when you try and pull filament out, and you can probably see here, it has to pull the filament out from under, and it can actually lock. And this will prevent it from being able to, your printer from being able to pull in more filament. And that can cause your print to fail. So keep track of your ends. And this is why I always wrap it around at least twice. Once through the thing and one above the thing to keep track of the end. If you have filament lying around for a very long time, it can become brittle. For this reason, I usually write when I open them. You may want to not leave your filament in your printer when you're not printing, because especially if you get brittle filament like this, you risk something like this. Or even worse, it could be broken here or broken in here. And if it breaks so that some of it is still in the boating cable, that kind of sucks. You can choose to print something flat and just try and time when you add filament to feed. But it's tricky, and the learning curve on that is not small. So if you have brittle filament, take it out when you're not using it. And for the Pro 2, there are people who've talked about, and whether this is the nozzle, the filament, or whatever, I don't know, but that they have, if they leave the filament in the down by the nozzle, then they have these filament beads, this plastic that turns super hard that can't get out. The recommendation to avoid that is simply remove the filament, do a change filament when you're done printing, so that it comes out. I prefer actually doing change filament when I start a new print, because that way it is already hot and it takes no time to start the print, because it literally just has to load the file. So that, I believe, was the talk about, perhaps filament cleaner. I should mention that. This is basically a type of filament. This is silicone-like, and you can't just feed it like you would the filament. The intention for this is that you have it to clean the nozzle. So when you take the boating cable out, you can just push this directly in and use it to clean the nozzle. Don't try to put this through the filament gear. It does not work. I'm speaking from experience. Don't do that. We generally we use like a piece, because you're not gonna use it on a spool. I've put mine on an old spool, but it's this nozzle cleaner thing. But that's just to keep track of it. So that should be the nozzle. I've